How's it going, everyone? I'm excited to have a wonderful group of folks representing four different companies pushing the frontier in different ways. Jay, I planted the seed about sort of long-running agents. We were talking before we got on stage about sort of like the tension for you all of this like taste human element in your product experience, and how like it definitely still requires in certain cases like this human in the loop to make a judgment decision. And I'm curious, as like agents out of the box start going longer running operations, et cetera, like what, like, is it still going to be taste that's the bottleneck for you all? Or like, where do you think the bottleneck is going to start to move in the product experience that you all are building as agents start running longer?
So first of all, we are really excited about the development of harness because before that, you have to basically write your own agent React loop and deal with all these things in context engineering. Now there are better and better harness. It feels like the MVC framework during the web era. Before that, you have to write all these things by hand, and then you have Ruby on Rails and Django, and it's much easier to write reliable software and to serve the customers. So with that, you have to focus on the taste because we serve the customers by helping them create good social media ready videos as agents. However, social media is a very competitive arena. And you cannot just make like a AI slop and hope to get a lot of viewership. You have to tell good stories. You have to give good visuals. And all these have to stand on top of what everybody else have been doing on social media, which means that the foundational model has their generic and homogeneous taste if you just use them without like a lot of thoughts into it. And one of our job is to inject a lot of the taste on top of in our product on top of foundational multimodal generators. And it's very important to measure the quality of the output of your product. So when you are iterating these skills and iterating templates, you have to make sure that any iteration brings your product better, not worse. And without a good eval mechanism, it's a lot of guesswork. And once you ship something, you don't know whether some people will get worse result and maybe some people will get better. And it has always been a challenge in this because it's easier to detect defects in videos, but it's hard to measure taste. And you have to combine human and a lot of rubrics engineering to measure these, to measure the quality of the output. And they can be expensive and inaccurate.
I'm curious for the other three panelists, like on this same through line as agents start running longer and longer and longer and doing more, it's obviously going to take longer to make that happen. Like unless all of a sudden we have magic chips that make everything super fast. And the tension is like, what does the user do while this thing is out running and doing a bunch of work on your behalf?
We disrupted our entire product experience when we launched Agent 3 back in September 2025. We were marketing the fact that our agent was running for 200 minutes in a row autonomously. I think we were the first company to just start to talk about the fact that it could run for hours. And it turns out that we probably didn't put enough emphasis on the fact that in reality, users will start to not pay attention to the product anymore for that reason. So I think autonomy shouldn't be fetish for agent builders at this point. Yes, it's important that you take a user from point A to point B without having them to worry about any of the technical details. But at the same time, the product experience has to be such that you remain engaged. And I think if purely you focus on making the agent more autonomous and there is nothing else to do on your product surface, you're gonna lose them, in the process. And I believe every product out there, even if they're not coding agents, they should start to think in these terms, where yes, you will have agents running in parallel, they're gonna be running autonomously, but you need to make sure that the user is engaged in some other ways. Otherwise, exactly what you were mentioning, they're gonna drop.
The drop is savage.
Yeah.
So I think, from our perspective, we're thinking about re-engineering the user experience in the app in 3 different ways as they wait for the feedback that they're expecting. The first is thinking about education. The second is social for us. And the third is very obvious, but gamification. And so in terms of the education piece, everything that we're trying to build now as you wait for a response to a query or you're expecting an output from the app is asking you to either give it more information or data in a really fun, gamified way, or is educating the end user on why this is important, what else you can do with the app in the meantime, thinking a lot about sharing our mission, our vision, which is centered around sustainability. And so we found really fun and engaging ways of doing that and hitting product education while the user waits. And then when we think about social, again, for us, we're a social wardrobe app. So you can go into your friends' wardrobes, style them. You can post style challenges with like, I don't know how to wear this suit. Guys, help, I got a big, talk tomorrow on stage. And so we think about leveraging those challenges as the user waits in order to kind of gamify that experience and get them doing fun, reinforcing things that continue to feed that data pipeline. And then in terms of the gamification segment, again, we've sort of re-engineered the whole thing to take a playbook, a trick out of Duolingo's playbook to think about, how can we get the user to complete really fun, engaging challenges that feel native and core to the experience so that they don't even remember that they're waiting, but they actually get brought into something else. And we're A/B testing right now. What are the best things that actually drive long-term engagement and retention? And so we find that we can sort of have these 2 things existing in parallel. And then they're really excited to get the final output when it's ready. And it's almost secondary because they've kind of hit these 3 things in the interim.
I'm curious where the bottlenecks are today across all 4 of your different products, and sort of how you're thinking about like, are these bottlenecks problems that you all are taking on? Is it things that you're like, the ecosystem is going to solve this and you'll benefit from those things? Do you need the model companies to solve them? I'm curious, what are the sort of top of mind bottlenecks?
I think the biggest bottleneck is verification. And the idea that agents at this point are autonomous enough to create PRs, to work for days in a row. But fundamentally, if we knew how to verify the outcome of what an agent has done, outside of the realm of coding, by the way, because if you work in an enterprise code base and it's very thoroughly tested and your agent is just extending the test suite, you probably get some level of certainty that your code is functioning correctly. But we don't know how it works in the real world, and especially for code bases that are not as mature as Google, then it's hard to rely exclusively on tests. It's hard to rely exclusively on CI/CD. So if we had proper verification techniques, both with and without coding in the picture, it will really help us to, first of all, trust agents running autonomously for long, and at the same time also change our pricing model. To your point, we don't want to charge per tokens anymore. It's hard to explain. It's a variable cost. It would be much better to charge by outcome.
I think for us, being kind of predominantly D2C or B2C, there are 2 things that are weirdly really difficult to kind of fix in a world where everything is fixable. For us, the first is, I guess, competition generally, right? Like when we started this, it was all about building the data set. It was all about trying to train your own models to do some form of styling or some form of personalization. And today, obviously, a lot of this stuff is kind of open to all. And so keeping up with the pace of competition in a like B2C world at cost, when you're looking at, who is raising more money and therefore has more, to do a proper go-to-market, to think a lot more about, acquisition of potentially a shared target market. So that's been really interesting in terms of thinking about how we can ship at scale really, really fast with precision. And I think that's the key point, right? Because this is a whole new world where if you're thinking about your brand awareness, your brand presence and recognition, ultimately your outputs have to be really good.
The thing that I would point to the most would be, so there's this concept of like the model overhang or capability overhang, where the models are just much further ahead than the products that are able to take advantage of the full capabilities of the model. I actually think that that's still true, but it's much less true today. I think that we're clearly hitting some limits that are like related to coherence over very long periods of time, around the quality and performance, about self-validation. And I think that what that means is that our harnesses are actually like the frontier harnesses that Agent Labs are putting out are just starting to get quite good. And now I think what we're seeing is a mindset overhang, or like an enablement overhang, where there are organizations in the Fortune 500 that have just fundamentally different software development organizations as a result of the deployment of these systems. And it's not really geographically split. Like in my head, I'm thinking about some of our customers in Poland, in Japan, in LATAM. Like there are organizations that are traditionally, you would probably say, quite slow on tech, that are almost fully autonomously shipping almost every single one of their PRs. And then there are organizations that are digital natives today that are still debating, like, should we use this tool or should we use that tool? And so to me, this seems like it's actually a mindset thing. There are organizations that just haven't fully grokked how different the world is today, not how it will be in 6 months or how everything's going to change soon. Like the world changed probably 5 months ago. And now if you're like basically not adopting this at full speed, responsibly, then it's going to lead to, I think, a sort of, oh no moment in a couple months where you're like, wait, when did this happen? When did everybody adopt these tools? And so I think that mindset is incredibly important for a CIO, CTO leadership team to have. And we do need to go full steam. The tools probably matter, at least to the extent that you have a frontier harness. But beyond that, all of the alpha is going to be how you choose to communicate to your team how to use the tool, not whether it's like tool A or tool B.